All right, everybody. Happy Saturday. We are live. I'm not usually live on Saturdays, but I've been talking to my guest here, who I'm going to introduce here in just a second. For a couple of weeks, we've been talking about trying to get together and do a little live show for you all, and kind of we have some things in common in that our backgrounds and things like that, and definitely both interested in preparedness and survival and things like that. So we've been getting along good off screen. We thought we'd get together on screen and put some stuff out there for you. So I appreciate you all joining us on a Saturday night, especially I know a lot of people were here last night for the Friday night stream. So to give us two days of your weekend, very, very grateful. We're going to give people just a minute here to get through any notifications and ads. If this is your first time on the channel, if you get anything of value, please consider giving us a thumbs up, and please consider subscribing both to myself and Penny Prepper. I have put his link in the description down below, and we'll drop it a couple times in the chat as well. So if you're watching on chat, you can do it that way. He's been putting out some great content, so definitely want to head on over there, check out his channel, and go ahead and subscribe over there. We have just a couple little rules here on my channel, which is number one, please be kind to my guests. And please be kind to the moderators. Moderators always give their time freely. They are not paid. So we'll ask that you please be kind to them. That being said, any criticism that you want to direct my way, you're welcome to, either in chat or in comments, as long as you're not hateful to large groups of people. If you do that, I'm probably going to delete it. So don't even waste your time typing it. That being said, let's go ahead and introduce tonight's guest. Please welcome Penny Prepper. How you doing, brother?
Doing pretty good. Thank you very much for asking.
And tell us a little bit about your channel. I know you're on a couple different social media, right? Besides YouTube?
Yep. I have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I also started a Rumble, but I don't really post too much on there. But yeah, my channel is pretty much about emergency preparedness. It's taking my time being a firefighter, EMT, working as a correctional officer, as well as being at Boy Scouts when I was younger, taking all that knowledge and giving back to the community a little bit, basically showing people the stuff that I picked up along the way and trying to help out anybody I can.
Awesome. And thank you for your work as a first responder. As you know, I very much am proud as a therapist to work with first responders as my primary population. So I appreciate what you do for your community. So what got you into preparedness? Like, was it a Boy Scouts thing?
Well, I mean, pretty much since Boy Scouts, I was always sort of into preparedness. I never really had a label for it. It was always just being prepared. You know, the Boy Scout motto is literally be prepared. And just sort of going through Scouts, I was always in the outdoors and going on hikes, stuff like that. And as I got older, I didn't really go out to camp as much anymore, but I've always kept that mentality. And really through COVID is where I started realizing, like, hey, you know, I need to have things prepared. I need to have a couple days worth of food in case I got sick. Same with water, just in case something were to happen to the grid. And also being off for the first time, I had about 2 weeks. I started looking into stuff, and that's when I found the world of prepping. And I was able to finally put a label on it. And I really started the research, and I really liked what it was about emergency preparedness. And just sort of blossomed from there. Only at the beginning of January did I actually start the channel. But before that, I was already stocking water, food, getting supplies, stuff like that. But just sort of grown from there.
And also, you know, being a first responder, I know because of the work that I do, you all have to bring some supplies with you at all times because there's situations where you may not get to go home at your designated time, right?
Right, 100%. There's been times, well, when I worked in a prison, I did doubles, which 16-hour shifts. There were times when I worked 16-hour shifts every day for a week straight. So I would just come home to sleep and go back into work. So if you needed food, you brought it with you.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. What's your favorite part of preparedness? Like, I know you and I were talking off screen, and you kind of have some ideas about what I'm into. What's your favorite part of it?
I would say the part that I like the most is giving back. As far as my channel, like giving back, showing people But really getting out there in the wilderness, that has got to be my favorite part. Being able to go for a hike where nobody's going to be around for a couple miles, getting back into nature and just enjoying the beauty of it all.
Mm-hmm.
That because really testing out your supplies, you're going to want to go somewhere more remote. And that's really the best part for me, is taking out a tent that I haven't used before with a sleeping bag, stuff like that, and just going for the night, testing all that stuff out, and really, I guess, testing your grit would be the best way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you do, well, we won't get too much into it because there's some secrets that go along with it, but did you do Order of the Arrow as well?
Yes, I did.
Okay. Yeah. And that was, for me, that was a big part of like me getting into like wilderness survival and that kind of stuff too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was definitely an experience. That's all I'll say about it. But, if you've done it, you know what I'm talking about. It was very eye-opening.
Yeah. For me, that we unfortunately we can't say what we're talking about, but some of the people in the audience who've done it will know. Like that experience actually was like for me kind of a turning point from childhood to adulthood in my mind. So thank you, chat. By the way, I see there's a few people popping in, and if y'all have questions, please let us know in caps. I have pretty bad vision, so it'll help me to catch it if you throw it into caps. I do my best to try to keep an eye on things, but sometimes as I'm scrolling, I'll miss something. So I like what you said there about going out to the wilderness and kind of testing yourself a little bit, especially for the survival and the bushcraft part of it. You can be a prepper and not even get into that part of it. You can just think about like storm preparedness and that kind of thing, which maybe we'll get to that a little bit later on. But when you start getting into like the more survival type parts of it, and like lost in the woods scenarios and bugging out and things like that, you can do a lot of testing of those skills just by kind of going off the trail a little bit, or even like camping, but try to minimize the equipment that you bring. Just as much as you can go down to bare bones is the best you're going to be able to simulate that. Is there certain places that you like to go to do some of that stuff?
Well, I am very blessed. I have a section of the Appalachian Trail just a little bit north of where I live. I pretty much, anytime that I have a couple days off, I will try to hit a section of the Appalachian Trail, especially one I've never been on before. I will say a lot of people who have hiked the Appalachian Trail can attest to this. The Pennsylvania section is very rocky. A lot of people call the Pennsylvania section Rocksylvania because it's ridiculous how much rocks there are. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely love going up on the trail. The other week, I had actually attempted one of the sections, and there were so many downed trees, and there was a lot of wildlife on the trail. Like there was a copperhead I ran into.
Oh.
And it actually came to the point where it took me 3 hours to get up one of the mountains, and I actually had to turn around because I had about an hour and a half until dusk.
Wow.
I had to book it back down to make it. But yeah, I mean, and that's the whole thing though too. Whenever I'm doing all these things, whenever I'm testing something out, I always make sure that I do it in a way I have a halfway point or a backup plan. I'm like, okay, this is where I absolutely can't go any further and I have to turn around. And that's actually what happened. I really hated it. That was one of the first times I ever had that happen. But yeah, I was like, yeah, I gotta turn back. But yeah, Appalachian Trail, absolutely beautiful. Anybody that's lucky enough to have sections going by where they are, absolutely recommend it highly.
Okay. Yep. And I would add to that, most of the states in the United States have state campgrounds and national forests and things like that. Go online, check out what they have, especially if it's like your first time doing this. Get the campsite that has the running water, get the campsite that has the electricity. Ease your way into it, get comfortable with it, and then as you go along, you can challenge yourself a little bit more and more. One of the biggest challenges that I always feel when rucking is water. Like, you can only carry so much water with you because it's so heavy. And so you have to have a way to purify it. But that's not even half the battle is like finding a safe source, right, can be tricky. So especially where I am, like most of the water that's close to me is saltwater or brackish. I really have to go inland to find like streams that I would be safe to drink from even with purification, you know. Speaking of which, so do you have like a favorite water purifier that you like to use?
Really, I haven't used the Sawyer I have yet. I have a Life Straw. I've utilized that a couple times. But I was also playing it safe with that. I typically boiled the water and then used the Life Straw just for that extra layer of security, just in case I didn't boil it long enough, and really just to test out the Life Straw. I've yet to actually just dip it in water and give it a try, even though I know it doesn't filter out viruses. So far, I have yet to get the nerve to just dip it in there and drink it, because I have that in the back of my head of, last thing I want to do is get sick out here. So
yeah. So the Life Straw doesn't filter out viruses?
at least that's what I saw on their website. I know that they do have one that will filter out viruses.
Okay.
I got to look at which one it is. I know the one I got was I think like $20 at Walmart, like the lower level one. I'm pretty sure that the Life Straw will not filter out viruses, or at least viruses that are so big.
Okay.
I don't see exactly how big it is, but yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I like, for my day hiking, I like the Grail. Have you seen that with
Yeah.
the GeoPress? Yeah. I like that a lot. The recently I just tested one of the electronic ones, which was actually it was pretty cool. And of course you're dependent on some way to recharge for something like that, but for like if you're doing a weekend hike or whatever, it's going to last you through the weekend. And if you had to recharge it, if you've got a portable solar panel, it will recharge that way. The advantage, so obviously that's the con of it, is like it's dependent on putting more energy back into it. But the advantage of it is super fast and like hands free. So like literally you could set it, go work on something else, and by the time like just getting your fire started, by the time you're done with that, it's done filtering. It's really cool. How about when you like to go out camping, do you have like particular other gear that you take with you?
Gear, well, I always have the one piece of equipment that will keep me safe just in case. Always have that with me whenever I'm out on the trail, just in case. I always have a knife with me, preferably one of my full tang knives. I know last time I had just gotten a Mora knife and out just to try it out, and it was fine for what I was using it for. I wasn't batoning anything. And then pretty much sometimes I'll just throw random stuff in there to sort of see or test it, I guess would be the best way to put it. Like I have a small little camp stove that is probably the size of like 2 pieces of toast. It's pretty interesting. And you use fuel tabs, and I didn't get a chance to use it, but I had it. And actually the county I hiked into actually had a burn ban. So I wasn't able to do anything with fire that night. So I was a little unlucky there.
Is it like one of those S-bit stoves?
I think, yeah, it's, unfortunately it's down in my pack right now, or else I'd bring it out and show you, but
No, it's okay.
yeah, I think it's Rothko brand. It's just something small. I have yet to use it. I thought it was really neat when I saw it at the military surplus store. And I was like, man, that could really be useful. Like you can throw sticks in it and burn stuff as well. But my canteen also has a little small section for stuff like that too. So I guess I could do that.
Yeah, I have something similar, and I like it a lot. It does, it does the job, especially like you said, if you can't get a campfire going or whatever, you can still do your cooking on it. And yeah, I've made coffee on it. I've made my, cup of soup, or like a backpack, one of those backpack meals that you have to add boiling water to and stuff like that. They're pretty good. They're pretty good, and it's even if the wind is going, you can kind of get your little stove going, and you're gonna be okay. You're gonna be able to at least get a hot meal in.
Do you use the fuel tabs with it, or do you use?
Yeah, the fuel tabs work better, but I have experimented with using like twigs and stuff like that, and pine cones and stuff like that, just to see if I could. And yeah, it will work. It's just the fuel tabs generate a little bit more heat, so it's a little bit more efficient, a little quicker. But you definitely can do it with twigs and things like that.
I'll have to give it a try like that.
Yeah. And I know I don't have one, but I've been thinking about getting one as those little solo stoves too. Have you seen those?
Yeah.
Those are cool.
Yeah, definitely. It's so funny. My wife keeps yelling at me every time I bring a new piece of equipment home. She's like, "When are you going to use that?" I'm like, "I'll figure it out. I'll do it soon."
Yeah, tell her it's for her.
Yeah, I don't think she'll believe that one.
She's not gonna go for that. So what about you? You and I were talking backstage a little bit about foraging. Have you played around with that?
Yeah, actually, I mow a lot of my neighbors' yards just to help them out, and I was finding a bunch of wild edibles and like what is it? Not spring onion. It is. I think it's called field garlic or something like that.
Okay.
And I made sure I identified it. I even asked. I do have one friend who is a little bit more familiar with those.
Mm-hmm.
So I asked them. They confirmed it, and I even they were like, "Oh, just make sure it smells like garlic or onion because the poisonous version won't." So after I checked those out, there's quite a few plants in my neighborhood actually that I didn't realize were edible, or even like dandelion that you can actually turn that into a tea and stuff like that. And I've slowly been getting into it
Mm-hmm.
with dandelions. I'm not really a fan of the taste
Yeah.
yet, but I guess it's one of those things where after a while, if you do it like somebody suggested putting honey in there,
Yeah.
um, I think progressing like that or trying things slowly, I'll
Mm-hmm.
probably get into it a lot more. But also, there's quite a few resources out there that I've been trying to utilize to get better at it. Because
Mm-hmm.
the last thing I want to do is break the number one rule and misidentify something and
Mm-hmm.
have a bad experience. But yeah, it's definitely something I'm slowly getting into, and watching your videos has helped out a lot.
Oh, I appreciate that. Yeah, and I'm still learning too. I'm pretty good at it. I can usually, like, so sometimes what I do, one of the challenges I do for myself is if I go for a hike, I'll try to say, okay, so within the next 30 minutes or within the next hour, I want to find 5 or 3 wild edibles that I know with 100% confidence these are ones that I can eat, and I usually can do it. Now, if you put me outside of my state, it starts getting harder, right? Because I know my area and I know, where stuff is here and that kind of thing. But the further away from this I go, like if I go to visit my brother in Arizona, I know very, very few wild edibles there. I would have a hard time. But your state is blessed. There's tons in Pennsylvania. There's tons of good wild edibles there.
Yeah, and once I started looking into it, I didn't realize how many there are.
Mhm.
Even there's even trees that I would pass by on walks with my dogs. I had no idea that I could either pull some of the fruits off of it and eat it, or
Mhm.
uh, I guess the best way to put it is prepare it in a way that I could
Mhm.
eventually. And that was really pretty neat to find out. Uh,
Mhm.
and definitely watching your channel has helped me um, get better by even watching how you do it.
Mhm.
I definitely sort of gotten my own system of trying to find out what around here I can eat and stuff like. I mean, most of the stuff I don't eat, I just take it home, identify it. I'm like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
that's good to know. And then I just sort of keep it in mind for later, and then I just keep researching. Uh,
Mhm.
there's not too much I've actually eaten yet. Uh,
Mhm.
sort of a couple things that I was able to 100% identify.
Mhm. And TJ's got a good suggestion there. The dandelion flowers when they're still yellow, like batter those and fry those up. It's like a fritter. They're really good. Um, I like the leaves like a salad. They're a little bit bitter, but if you're gonna put any kind of dressing on it, anyways, like olive oil, oil and vinegar, ranch, whatever, whatever you like. We're not always in a survival situation. Sometimes you can just enjoy it. And I like the dandelion leaves. Cash and Coins, good to see you, my friend. Yeah, and mimosas, I just did a video about that. So that was one I learned from. So we have a couple good foraging teachers here in Charleston, one of whom is April Punsalam. She has a channel that Wild Herbs Academy. She doesn't upload too much here anymore, but she's very active on Instagram. And I took a class with her. She's the one I learned about mimosa from, which is a tree that the flowers look, I think they look like a peacock. I mean, other people would be like, no, that's not it at all, but that's how I think of it. And those are actually good for anxiety. And I think the title of my video was like, this flower will help you with anxiety and insomnia. And it's not the one you're thinking of, because everybody, of course, thinks of cannabis for something like that. But maybe you can't have cannabis because of your job, or maybe you can't, maybe it's illegal. It's illegal in my state, so this will give you some relief from anxiety and insomnia, and it's perfectly legal, and it's pretty readily available in my area. It does grow all throughout the United States. It's probably less common in some areas, and it doesn't have that intoxicating effect. So like, you can have a glass of tea with this and, repair your engine or whatever you need to do. It's not gonna make you feel funny. So pretty cool plant. Yeah. Tree, really pretty cool tree. Not native to the United States. Pom-poms. So yeah, so I said peacocks. Cash and Coin said they look like pom-poms. That's probably a little bit more accurate. So what about in terms of like, have you found any good medicinal plants while you were out there?
Unfortunately, no, I haven't. I mean, I found what is it? Dead purple nettle.
Oh, purple dead nettle. Yeah.
Yeah. And I collected some. I actually was able to get some of the seeds from it. I didn't have any cuts or anything that I could utilize the leaves for or anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I found a couple that I could utilize for medicinal purposes, but I didn't really have the time or need for them at the time. I actually had let some of them, after I got the seeds, some of them sort of died a little quicker than I wanted to. I was hoping I could put them into a tea or something like that, but I let them go a little too long.
And I without looking it up in my book, is that like stomach? Purple dead nettle is good for your stomach and digestion?
Yeah, it said that it you can also utilize the leaves for antiseptic,
Okay.
stuff like that, as well as if you put it into a soup or you boil it, yeah, it will help your stomach out. And that was something that I was like, I don't really have stomach issues, but I do have a little bit of indigestion sometimes. And I was thinking, I want to see if it'll work for that. But I just, unfortunately, I missed my chance with the ones I found.
Yeah. And those, I think they mostly pop like early spring, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They taste a little bit like kale to me. So if you like steam them with some salt and butter, they're not bad. And it has a cousin plant too. I'm trying to remember what the name of it is. Not stinging nettle. Maybe it'll come back to me, but it's basically very, very similar and has all the same. They look alike. They look a lot alike. Both are edible. Both have the same basic medicinal qualities. In fact, it's pretty hard to distinguish them unless you like really know what you're looking for. Purple dead nettle, and if somebody in chat knows what I'm talking about, maybe they'll answer it. Chloe Elliott, thank you so much for the donation. I really appreciate that, and that is a fantastic suggestion. I actually have had dandelion wine, and it is really, really good. That is not a bad idea at all. In fact, this was years ago with my ex-wife. We were both into like horseback riding and trail riding and stuff like that. We were in Tennessee on this trip. We brought our horses with us, and we were out on a trail, and we met these 4 moonshiners on horseback there, and we started hanging out with them, and they had some dandelion wine, and and we tried a little bit of that, and it was really good. In retrospect, that might have been a little bit risky, but our judgment was like these guys were friendly. We didn't get a bad vibe off them at all. I wouldn't necessarily advise people to take wine from strangers that you meet in the middle of the woods, but life is short. Sometimes you have to have a little bit of fun. Butter makes everything taste better. I agree with that. Everyday life of OCD chick. There we go. Bacon says, census talk of booze. He's been summoned. Bacon, have you ever had dandelion wine, and what do you think about it? All right, let's see. So I think I'm going to hit on the mental health issues here in just a little bit, but anything else on foraging that you can think of? Is there books that you found helpful?
I have plenty of books. I've noticed that a lot of them, they always say, make sure that you are able to positively identify something, and really just looking in a book, I feel like doesn't give that 100% feeling most of the time. That's why I do have some friends that are a little bit more familiar with foraging, and those are the kind of people that I would probably take out and use their expertise instead of looking in a book and maybe misidentifying something. But one of the things I really wanted to ask you, do you have any specific tools that you take out when you go foraging, like any specific knives for cutting?
Just usually just my pocket knife, and then something to collect with, like the Wazoo foraging bandana is actually really good because it's got like a mesh side, so it lets stuff breathe. But if you didn't want to get that, like anything that like it's got to be some kind of like breathable bag or breathable fabric, or else everything you collect is going to get wilty and nasty. Your phone camera is actually your best resource, I think, because if I don't know what something is, and if I don't have an internet signal, I'll take a picture, and then later on I'll try to look it up. If I do have an internet signal, then I'll try to look it up that way. Of course, I'm not going to eat it until I verify with multiple sources and that kind of stuff. I have, several books at home that I like. I'll link one of them here in chat. This is Dr. Mark Merriweather Vorderbruggen's book, and he is a foraging expert. And I took a class with him last fall. I'm going to actually be taking another class with him this fall, assuming he teaches it again at Georgia Bushcraft. So that link there that I just put up is to his book. That's an Amazon affiliate link. So if you use it, folks, I do get a commission, and I'm required to tell you that. As far as, Google camera search isn't bad. And I want to touch on the plant ID apps for just a minute. So I don't encourage people to use those as your only source, because they do make mistakes. And I've experimented with it, and I've found that it makes mistakes. You can use it as a starting point. So like if you have like Plant ID or one of those other ones, and you're not sure, and you're like, okay, well, let me start here. Take the picture, let it analyze it, let it do its thing. But don't go just off that, please, because they do make mistakes. Then you can take whatever it tells you, go on to Google, start searching it there, go home, check your books, see what it says there. And then, if you feel like, okay, multiple sources are all saying this is the same thing, my eyeballs are telling me this is exactly the same thing, then you can probably go for it. But another resource is like Facebook has a number of foraging groups, and they can be pretty good in terms of like sharing pictures and saying, hey, I think this is chanterelle mushrooms. What does everybody else think? And just be prepared that, as with all areas of the internet, you're going to get some trolls, and you're going to get some people who are, like talk down to people and that kind of stuff. You're going to get people arguing about, well, in my neighborhood, in my state, we don't call it that. That's something else. Why don't you use the botanical name and stuff like that? So I started, whenever I do my videos now, I do include the botanical name because there's regional differences. Like wild lettuce is a good example. Wild lettuce is going to be 5 different things in the United States, maybe more, depending on what part of the country you're in. So you can't just call it wild lettuce. You gotta say, is this Lactuca varioso or whatever, and then now the wild lettuces tend to be like all cousins, and they Most of them are edible, and most of them have the same medicinal qualities and things like that. But people get kind of weird on those forums about that stuff. So fair warning, they're helpful, but you got to dig through some trolls too. Yeah, and that's the Google camera search, Mac. That can be absolutely a good starting point. All right, so let's talk about, what's your thoughts on precious metals?
I actually, a little while back, I started my precious metal journey. I started with a little bar of silver. And it's one of those things where whenever I have a little bit of extra money, like something that I set aside specifically for something like that, I wait till I get whatever it would be for either 1 ounce, 10 ounce, depending, 5 ounce maybe. And I'll go out. Typically, I go to a local pawn shop by me that's been working with me a lot. Once they found out that I was getting into it, at first I sort of saw like the glimmer in their eye, like they were thinking, oh, we might be able to make some money off this guy. But then I started talking with them, and I spent a good half hour to 45 minutes in there just talking with them before I even bought my first piece. And once I felt comfortable, I started buying. And they actually said to me, they were like, we enjoyed the conversation. We enjoyed educating you. And I went back, verified, made sure everything that they told me was true. And I actually got a pretty good deal, I found out at the time. And I've been going to them every so often whenever I accrue over $100, $200, whatever I want to spend on it at the time. And I've slowly been building it up. And, sometimes they'll even say to me about seeing if I want to buy a certain piece before other people, which is nice because I built up that rapport with them. And I feel like I probably wouldn't get that if I go into maybe a bigger type store. But so far, that's been my experience, and I've really started to enjoy it. But it's something that, again, I'm still at the beginning stages, but it's pretty interesting stuff when you see how the market goes up and down for it, how different things can be different values, and it's just eye-opening and it's pretty neat. That's the best way to put it. Nobody's been into it before.
Yeah, and there's that feeling when you get that first piece of silver in your hand and it's yours, like I'll never forget that. And of course you're like, I want more, it's very, very addictive. I always encourage my audience to, like, don't go 100% in on silver and gold. Like, I'm an advocate for silver and gold. It's part of my investment portfolio. I do consider it an investment. Some people don't. They say you shouldn't think of it like that. Think of it like a savings or whatever. However you want to think about it. I wouldn't put all of my eggs in any one basket. So I also like dividend stocks because they create passive income. I'll gamble a little bit with crypto. It's not my biggest chunk of my portfolio by a long shot. It's probably my smallest chunk of my portfolio. But silver and gold, I try to aim for like 5 or 10% of my money goes into silver and gold. And it'll build up over time. I've been doing it since 2009. A lot of people in the prepping community will say, well, that's useless if SHTF happens, or you'll hear, you can't eat silver and gold. Well, I can't eat my flashlights, I can't eat my knives, but they have a purpose, right? My tent has a purpose. I can't eat my tent. So silver and gold to me are, it has a lot of different purposes. If take SHTF out of the equation, I'm putting money away towards retirement, right? Like, and it's, it goes up and down, but there tends to be less risk with silver and gold than with other assets. This is not financial advice, of course. Because everything has risk. Everything has some risk. And if you got into silver when it was at $50 an ounce and bought a ton, you'd be crying right now because it hasn't gotten back to there in years. And I tend to think of it as like it has some physical, it's something physical that you can hold in your hand, whereas my stocks don't, right? My stocks are just a digital number somewhere. I can, in theory, I could go anywhere in the world and change that out to a local currency. So if I wanted to get out of the country because things had gotten so bad, that gives me some options to restart somewhere else. And if nothing else, because if people were to ask me, what am I prepping for? Honestly, I'm hoping to retire someday. Like I hope that all these things that we talk about don't happen. I would like to have a retirement someday, and I would have it's just one more asset that I could slowly piecemeal sell off in my retirement. Whereas cans of peaches, yeah, you have to have your Spam and your cans of peaches too, but I'm not going to be able to sell those in my retirement.
Right. Yeah, I think
Um,
for me, I loved the feeling, like you said, it's one of those things where you can see it and you can feel it, know it's there. You can secure it however you want. It's not like with the bank where if you know something bad is about to happen and you go to try to remove your money, they're probably going to stop you and say, "Nah, we don't think so." And that's why I like that feeling of this has value right here, not with a dollar bill or $100 bill, where you look at it and it's a piece of paper, it's a promissory note that just simply says, this is how much money, this is how much this is worth if you use it. And
right.
it's literally worth the amount that of the paper it's printed on, especially if the backing of the gold in Fort Knox isn't there, um, or there were to be some catastrophic economic collapse, that paper will be useless, whereas that silver will retain its value.
It has for thousands of years. It's silver and gold. The value for silver and gold has survived the collapse of several empires, and it's one of the things on the planet that has so many uses industrially, medically. It's needed by every country in the world, and there's only so much of it. And in we'll say 7,000 years of civilization or whatever, they have not been able to figure out how to make an alloy that can replace silver and gold for what it can do. So yeah, it's hard to imagine that it could drop a ton in value unless there's only a couple of scenarios I think that would make that happen, which would be number one, if they suddenly found a giant cache of it somewhere, a mine that had been previously undiscovered, and there's like billions and billions of tons of silver and gold in there. That, of course, is going to affect the market. Or if they were able to come up with an industrial alloy that could replace it, but nobody's been able to do that.
Right.
Hey, everybody, it's checking in. I saw Hill Country Prepper Digital. Appreciate you. Bacon, your story there about the woman who was feeding you mushrooms in the park sounds like a good topic for your live stream. And I'm glad it was chanterelles and not something else. I'm just here for the whales. Freedom by me. Thank you for the shout out, by the way. Saw that, and several people came over and joined my channel between last night and today. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. Taking my wife to work so we can pay the lizard people. All right, well, be safe out there, Robbie. Yeah, Gina's a fan of silver and gold too. It looks like you had a comment and it took it away, or you took it away. But thank you, Gina. Yeah, Gina's got a good channel too. If you all are interested in silver and gold, she's into that too, and she also does like currency hunting and stuff like that. She's got good stuff. Check her out. So, what's in terms of silver and gold? Do you have like favorites that you're like really are into right now? When I started, Morgan's was like my favorite thing. I still like Morgan's.
Nothing specific right now. I've really been just going after the bars for now. I probably am going to have to do a lot more research before I actually start going into coins and stuff like that. But for now, the bars are simple. They're not exactly the hardest thing to figure out. They have so much value, and most of the time that is what my pawn shop has. They're easy to grab. I don't have to haggle with them too much about it. So far, I would probably have to say that's something I definitely want to get into. But for now, I'm just sticking with the plain Jane stuff with that I know. I find the coins pretty neat. I just need to really buckle down on my homework before actually going in there and trying to buy any of that. That's that's a whole other level. And I didn't realize how intricate it was until
Mm-hmm.
I started looking into it a little bit. And you know, even at the pawn shop itself, they do have coins, but yeah, there's quite a bit to it, and I'm not quite to that level just yet.
Sure. Yeah, the and bars are a good way to go. You're going to get the most weight per dollar if you go bars. That's, you know, that's pretty consistent anywhere. And if, you know, when you start to get into the coins and stuff like that, there's just so many different directions you can go with it that there's like people love the Mexican. A lot of people love the Mexican Libertads. I did, but their premiums are so high that I've kind of leaned away from those. They're beautiful. They're a very beautiful coin, but they're, you know, they're so much more per ounce than so many other options out there. Morgans have probably always been my favorite, and I like Mercury Dimes and American Eagles. Of course, they've high premium on those, unfortunately, too. Canadian Silver Leafs, great option to go with, and that's kind of a nice in between for Americans between like paying, you know, American Eagle, you're going to pay a lot of premium for. Canadian Silver Maple Leafs, you tend to have less premium, but they're also going to be recognized anywhere in the United States, so it's not a bad in between option. Yes, we were kind of talking Freedom by Me. We were kind of talking about some of that stuff last night about, you know, number one, there is some risk with that. And number two, you know, there was a gold confiscation in our country about 90 years ago. And legally, it could happen again. We actually covered that last night that just by definition, the government just has to declare that they have to confiscate the gold by a crisis. So what's a crisis? It's anything they want it to be. Right. So should be aware of that. But boat accidents happen all the time. Yeah. And watch out for scams, too. That's good advice. Absolutely. There is, unfortunately, there is some counterfeits. I usually recommend people to make sure you're going from a reputable source that you trust, and just be aware of that. I did get one that I know of. I got a fake silver coin off of eBay years ago. Yeah, it was during the Depression. Freedom by Me. It was during the Depression. I should probably do a whole video just on that because I need to do a deeper dive on it. We were trying to pull up some information on it last night, and there's a lot of misinformation too. There's stuff out there like there's certain types of coins that would be in theory protected because like if they're rare, so some people will only collect rare gold coins, and that is a different level of legal protection in theory. Yeah, I am too. I am too, Bacon. Yeah. Yes, thank you for mentioning that. Watch out for that stuff and the inserts in the back of magazines and stuff like that. Watch out for that. All right. Anything else on precious metals that you want to talk about?
I would say, what is your best comeback when somebody says about buying precious metals, and they always say, well, the only precious metal that I stack is brass and lead. I don't know if you have any comebacks to that.
Well, so first of all, yes, I stack those as well, and I don't argue against anyone who you know recommends that. But you know, I usually just say, well, I can't eat my flashlights, I can't eat my my knives, but those have a purpose, and I don't intend to eat my coins. And you know, and when people say like nobody would want that, let's say that SHTF, like a really bad situation happened, and like, you know, our economy is completely screwed. The government's like really messed up and in shambles, and you know, supply chains are not happening and stuff like that. People say, well, nobody would want that. I disagree. And I base that off of reports coming up that came out of Argentina when their economy collapsed, and reports that came out of the Eastern Bloc, the Soviet Union, when the Soviet Union fell apart. And all you need is one person in your area that has their food covered, that they've got a room full of canned Spam and canned peaches, and they know how to forage, and they know how to garden, and they know how to hunt, and they know how to fish. And you bring them a can of peas and you want to make a trade, they're not going to want to do business with you, but they might be interested in your grandmother's diamond ring, because that person might know that golden diamond have a value that's going to be useful elsewhere or down the line when things start to recover. So, and if people can't do it, I get it. Like that should not be our first prep. I will agree with anyone who says that too.
Yeah.
Right. Food security and the way to purify water should be first. You agree?
Yeah, 100%.
Do you do hunting and fishing, anything like that?
I used to fish. I haven't really done it in a while. Hunting, I actually have my hunting license for the first time last year, and I got laryngitis, so I wasn't even able to go out. I really wanted to. I actually had just got a hunting rifle for deer specifically, and it was a big letdown. I was getting ready all summer into the fall, and time came and I wasn't able to go. But yeah, I definitely plan on doing it this year, hunting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't even know if I'm going to see anything. You know, being 6'3", I'm a little bit of a cumbersome fella, so I might be breaking too many twigs out there, and I might not even see a deer. But
yeah, I'm a terrible hunter, and partly for some of those reasons that you said, but more so when I have had to kill an animal. And if you ever own a farm, which I did, you're going to have some pests and predators and things like that you're going to have to take care of. And I'm not good at it because I get tore up about it. And, I'm a meat eater. I know we need to understand our source of our food and all that stuff. But it's just, I never got comfortable with it. I think being in, pet lover and that kind of stuff, it's hard for me. I have nothing against anybody who does that. I have complete respect for it because it's how we eat, right? If you're an omnivore, you're going to eat meat. This is a really good question. So kind of talking about those werewolf preppers that say, I've actually seen this posted somewhere. Somebody posted this recently on one of my videos of, I don't need this and that. All I have is my gun and ammo, and I'm going to take whatever I need if SHTF happens. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first of all, that is very dangerous for yourself. I don't know, anybody's not going to fight back for their resources. So if they so happen to have somebody there helping them, maybe they have their you might think that there's some little old lady, but maybe their kid came over to help them out during whatever crisis is going on.
Right.
And they may be a lot more well equipped than you are. I actually would probably do the opposite, where I would try to help my neighbors as much as I possibly could. And where I couldn't, I would try to still help them. I mean, that's a big thing. You always hear people say that people are your biggest resource, and it's true. Not just because you're going to have to sleep at some point, but they might have something that you don't, or what if something were to happen to your supplies? It's very possible that you may have the best supply cache that you could imagine. You may have all your ammunition, but let's say that you go to forage and you come back, your house caught on fire and all of the stuff got burnt down. Then you're back to square one, and maybe say the other people find out that you were trying to rob little lady Joseph or Jane Smith down the road, and they find that out. They're not going to help you. So it's one of those things where you're better off being an asset to people than you are trying to take from them. I always hear that where people say, "Oh, I'm gonna go over to so and so's house and I'm gonna take their stuff." It's like, no, I don't think you realize what that really entails. First of all, you have to be a certain type of person to just do that. And on top of that, if you are that type of person, it might work once or twice, but eventually somebody's going to have your number, and you're not going to. It's one of those things. It seems like a great idea. It's the romanticized version of prepping, where somebody's like, "Oh, I'm going to survive and do all this stuff." It's like, no, that's not how it works. It's not The Walking Dead. It's real life, and a lot of people don't get that.
Yeah, and that's I agree with all of that. First of all, if anyone's out there saying, "Well, that's your plan for prepping," then you're not prepping. You're doing something else. And if you're so easily and willing to go to the use of violence, now it really makes me question, like, what kind of person are you now, right? You're not somebody that I would want in my group if you're that willing to do that. Now, that being said, there are times when we have to defend ourselves, and I honestly, in survival situations, if somebody stole from somebody's garden to feed their kid, I would actually understand that. I would prefer that they come and ask me and I would help them out, but I would understand if somebody did that, But Selko, when he was talking, he's got a lot of great resources about, collapse of the Soviet Union and how things went down. And he talks about like these warlords that would basically rule a neighborhood and just like rule with an iron fist, take what they want, expected people to garden and work for them, kind of like Negan in the Walking Dead. And inevitably they all get dealt with, because eventually people are like, we're done, and they're going to get you when you're sleeping, or they're going to poison your food, or they're going to, you have to sleep. Nobody is invulnerable. Nobody is, that. So it's a bad strategy that will eventually, if that's the way you're going to run it, then you're probably going to not make it too far. But I remember the comment was actually on my video that I did recently about what are we going to do for medications when, if the supply chains get permanently screwed up, or SHTF, right? And kind of planning ahead. It was about that. And the comment was, well, I would just go into the pharmacy with my AR. And so I live in Hurricane Alley, and I have on a couple occasions, just to see what it was like right hours before the hurricane hits, right before, like the last minute stuff before all the stores and all the gas stations shut down, it is pandemonium in there. There's a really edgy vibe. Everybody's like stressed out, on edge. They want to get their stuff and get home. So it doesn't feel good. Like, I've been in those situations and was, doing my concealed carry for my own safety. But my thought when I did that was, okay, so now if you take that to like a really bad SHTF where like nobody knows how long the system's going to be down, you're not going to be the only person going into the pharmacy to cause trouble. And I don't care if you got an AR or if you got a minigun or a flamethrower or whatever. Good luck with the 40 gang members that got there before you.
Right.
See you, buddy. It's not a realistic strategy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, Lee, did you want to hit on the mental health stuff a little bit? We're getting close to an hour.
Yeah.
So, I know we did that stream. Who else was on there with us? We had Penny Pinching Prepper, Farmer Son Prepper,
the Ontario Prepper.
Yeah, the firefighter.
Yes.
Yeah. We were kind of hitting on some of this there. I think that I see this a lot in the forums again, where there's this idea of I'm indestructible. If stuff, I would be perfectly fine in an SHTF situation. Stuff wouldn't get to me. But as a first responder and I'm a therapist, how realistic do you think that is?
Not very. I mean, I haven't been alone for 3 months. Like, even on the show alone, I haven't dealt with that. But even I've hiked in the backcountry with just a bunch of my friends in New Mexico, and being away from my family for 3 weeks, I mean, it can really start to get to you, especially all it takes sometimes is just, starting to talk about your family or your friends or your girlfriend, your wife, and just getting that emotion out. It starts to make you think about it. And just like with anything, sometimes it can be the smallest thing and it can grow and grow. And before you know it, it's the only thing you have on your mind.
Yeah. And that's the solitude for anyone who's thinking about like bugging out into the woods and that kind of stuff, for sure. I think you mentioned the show alone is a great example of that. That's usually, for the people who make it far, like past a couple weeks, that's usually what ends up taking them out is the mental game of starting to get like too lonely, too depressed, missing their family, and it starts to take a toll. There's some research that's been done on this in my field where guys have gone into isolation for long periods of time to measure the effects of it. And basically after 30 days, even really mentally strong people start breaking down and having some pretty bad symptoms like hallucinations and things like that. It's your mind can't, we're not evolved to be solitary creatures. We're more like herd or pack creatures than anything else. But what about the idea of like, if you're civil unrest and violence and things like that, you see people kind of talk big on the internet, but there's an effect that happens to people when they are exposed to a lot of violence, or they have to do violence for something. There's an effect that the first responders get when they have to respond, even just to like car accidents and stuff like that, if it's particularly gory. You see something that most people are not ready to see, and I don't want to get too graphic here and get disturbing to people, but I've heard stories because of the work that I do of stuff that would I can hear it and I can listen to it, but if I saw it, it would have probably made me throw up. So pretty gruesome stuff. I don't think people realize what that would really look like if you are witnessing, let's just imagine without rule of law, right? If there's no 911 coming to rescue you.
Right. That's what it is. They're going to be at home tending to their families because their family is going to take priority over whatever's going on too.
Hey, Rosemary, thanks for joining us. Yeah, and Jonesy talked about the people fighting over toilet paper. I remember that. That was a weird thing that toilet paper ran out. Like that was kind of freaky. And even us, like being a prepper household, we didn't have a ton of it stored. I had some, and then when like it goes on to like now 3 weeks, 4 weeks, and it's like, man, the stores are not getting this back in time. It was pretty weird.
Yeah, I definitely, especially like when they would tell you there's a limit. It's like that's really odd. It's like it's literally just something, that you wouldn't think of. It wouldn't be your first thought of, oh, what do I need to make sure I'm prepared? Food, water, toilet paper. No, it's not. It's not one of the things that you would normally think of. So it even took me for quite a loop. And I said, my fiance at the time, now wife, I looked at her and I was like, well, I'll just use leaves. And she had this look like before she like was like, that's disgusting. I'm like, what? Like you can use leaves.
Yeah. It was worldwide because Jonesy, you're in Tasmania. It was like the strangest thing for the world to run out of. It really was. And I think people were having to look at like, okay, so what if we really can't get it again? Like, what would your options be? Toilet paper wasn't always a thing, like there was other ways to handle this problem. It's just we get so used to it. It's a pretty nice luxury to have. I mean, I know there was a couple people at work that we were trying to help out with what we could. And just like that look on their face, like so grateful, like, oh, thank you, you gave me 2 rolls of toilet paper. Like, wow, this is weird. This is really kind of a strange wake up call for everybody.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great example of being able to have the ability to barter too. I'm sure you probably could have at the time. I mean, I've heard of during COVID, people were selling toilet paper. They would go buy it in bulk and they would sell it for ridiculous amounts. I heard, I don't know how true it is. Somebody said that they paid $20 for a roll.
Oh my gosh!
Like that's absolutely absurd. Like, they were like, oh, it's only toilet paper. I use this or that. I was like, doesn't sound right. Like, incredible the lengths people went through.
Yeah,
and here I am saying, I'll just use leaves. It's cheaper. It's better for the.
I'm not paying 20. I'll start looking at alternative options before I pay $20 a roll.
I think bidets might have had a resurgence around that. I know I around COVID, I was getting a bunch of emails from this place that sells bidets, and I was like, I never even thought of that. Well, yeah, it's there's, like you said, there's a lot of alternatives, and some of them might even be better for you and or the environment, better on your wallet.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I know a few people that installed them when that was going on. We didn't, but I mean, that's an option. There's I don't want to get into the specifics on what your options are. You can use your imagination, people. But remember, like soap and water, if you've got that stocked, will go a long way too. So uh, don't make sure you're at least stocking up on soap unless you have the ability to make it, which is not like the easiest thing to do. Because you need lye and fat, right? And what else? Ash? Is it lye? Yeah. I'll have to Rogue Preparedness has a few videos on how to do it. But back to the mental health thing. So did you, as part of your work, have you taken any like mental health first aid classes or anything like that?
Actually, surprisingly, I think the first one I had was for the prison that I worked for. I didn't expect it to be part of the curriculum. It was very brief, but it was good. I had already basically, from being an EMT and firefighter, I've seen quite a bit of things, and I was really young when I got into it. I was 18 when I became a firefighter. I was about 21 when I became an EMT, and I never understood why I acted the way I did after a while. Sometimes now I'll even have to stop and say to somebody, "Oh, sorry, my dark sense of humor is showing," because I'll say things and I'll think it's funny, but I realize afterwards it's like it's very morbid and I shouldn't have said it in a public setting. But yeah, most of the time it is one of those things where even having my wife, who is in the mental health field, it's something that you can, after you've dealt with it long enough, you start to realize like you can be the biggest guy.
Mm-hmm.
You may have muscles, you may be able to train your muscles, but your mind is something that I feel like, especially for men, we don't have that stigma that we can reach out and ask other people for help.
Yeah.
One of those things where after a really gnarly call, you come back, you might be quiet for a while. And then if you do reach out to somebody, they might either be like, "Oh, let's grab a drink and forget about it." And you just sort of drink it away. And that's not really the healthy way to do it. It's
Right.
about talking to somebody, getting it off your chest, and really working through the issues. That's something I've really gotten better at.
Mm-hmm.
I always say to my wife, she's like, I have little sessions with the dogs. I talk to them, I vent to them.
Yeah, that's
And
good.
even something so small like that, it's a huge help. But yeah, mental health, I think I talked about it. I think it was brought up in the last stream you and I were on together. And it's such a huge thing. Like, you may have everything prepared. You may have all the food you need. You could have family, but as soon as things start to get a little hard and you're not ready for it, it can truly break you down.
Yeah.
And on top of that, as soon as you start to slip down that slope, it just can get progressively worse.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Bacon, thank you for saying that. I was gonna talk about how it's just it's an ego defense, and all people may not want to hear what a firefighter or an EMT, the kind of humor that they're using in those situations, but if you haven't had to do that kind of work, you wouldn't understand that like it's either that or scream or cry. So making a joke that other firefighters or EMTs might understand is a way of survival, right? So again, yeah, nobody should be judging for that. That being said, like I usually tell my first responders, like if you have to use that, try not to do it in public settings because a lot of people aren't going to get it,
Yeah.
So let me hit on this a little bit. There's a couple things. So if we had like a really bad system breakdown, right? We're talking a SHTF that's going to go on for a long period of time. The types of mental health issues that people are going to be dealing with, whether you may say no, not me, but yeah, all of us: depression, anxiety, trauma, and insomnia. Those four would be rampant. And so I can't hit on all 4 of them tonight, but let's hit on the trauma one. So I always tell my first responders that what you were saying is 100% right. Like, don't store it up here. Don't try to drink it away, because you can do that for a little while. It will work for a little while, but eventually that box gets full and it's going to overflow. And how it's going to look when it overflows is you might start getting nightmares, you might start getting flashbacks, you might start flipping out and yelling at people that you love, and then feeling like really bad about yourself because you did that. And those are just some of the common symptoms of trauma. So talking about it as soon as it's safe to talk about it and getting it out of here is good. Learning techniques like sensory grounding, which I will explain for people. If you do get flashbacks, you don't want to allow yourself to keep following that image. You got to try to pull away from it, because you're creating a neural pathway that's going to happen more and more the more you allow it to happen. So how do we pull away from it? We do a technique called sensory grounding, where literally you look around and you're like, what are 5 things that I see in this room right now? Okay, now what are 4 things that I hear? What are 3 things that I feel? And I don't mean emotionally feel, I mean physically feel. 2 things that I smell, 1 thing that I taste. And if you can't come up with like 4 things that I hear, just go on. You just go on to the next one. So the idea is you're using your senses to ground you back in the moment. Now later on, if you want to think about that image, that's fine. But we want the person to be in control of the projector, not the projector to be in control of the person. So that's something that I think like everybody should know for trauma response. And talking about it, of course, is good. And then the other thing I tell all my patients is you can't, whatever happens, right? Like, let's say that you go out and you're working a fire, or you go out and you have to work a car accident and it's really bad, and you're picking up body parts off the side of the road, or you are patching up somebody who got shot, or whatever. Whatever happens in the aftermath of that, you don't want to play the game of, I should have done this, I could have done that, I wish I had done this, I wish we'd gone left instead of right, we could have gotten there 5 minutes earlier. That's like the worst thing that you can do. You have to just be okay that with whatever decision you made at that moment was the right decision. You followed your training, you were professional, you did the best you could, and then that's it. That's it. If you play that what if game and you start wrestling with it, your mind is gonna create a wrestling match up there, and it's going to play out in your dreams, and it's going to play out in other areas of your life. So you just have to say to yourself, this was the right decision at that moment in time based on the information that I had. And that's it, And that most calls, that are not like, hey, my neighbors, put trash in my yard or something, like the real calls, like, hey, somebody's in my house right now, or I just got stabbed or whatever. A lot of those don't end well, they're not going to have a good outcome a lot of the time. So playing that what if game, it's not going to be good.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, one of the big things that I really started to do for myself when I was single, I didn't really have anybody to go to about this stuff. And I didn't have anybody to just talk to. A lot of times what I did, I actually started writing in a journal.
That's great.
That helped me so much because it was a way for me to vent. And not only was it a way for me to vent, but it was a way for me to do it that I didn't feel as though somebody else might be judging me.
Right.
It was, I could write exactly how I was feeling and not have to hold back any punches. And then actually doing that, I eventually got the nerve to start talking to my parents a little bit about it. And then I progressed from there.
That's great. Yeah. And the reason that works well and talking to your dog works well is because, again, you're not trying to store it up here. You're getting it out.
Right.
So good job. All right. Well, what else do you have tonight? Was there topics that we didn't hit on, or questions that you had, or anything you wanted to bring up?
I think we hit a lot of them. I can't really think of anything else specifically that I think pretty much that's a majority of it. No, I think we hit them all.
All right. I appreciate it. Well, let's start to tie a bow on this one. Appreciate everybody who hung out and chat. Thank you so much. And if you're watching this on replay, appreciate you as well. And again, I'm going to drop the link in chat for Penny Prepper. And please go ahead and give him a subscribe. If you're watching this on replay, you can also click into the description and it should be there as well. I hope everybody has a fantastic rest of your weekend. If you did not get outside today, try to get outside tomorrow. Enjoy it before you have to get back to work, assuming you're working a 9 to 5 like me. Penny Prepper, thank you so much for coming on the show. Appreciate you. You're welcome back anytime.
Thank you very much. It was great to be here.
And if you want to set something up on your channel, I'm happy to come over and visit your house.
Sounds great.
All right. Everybody have a great weekend. Keep planting your seeds. Keep stacking your silver. This is Penny Prepper and Prepping with Sarge.